Hey, book two. Welcome to Jackie's Literary Corner. I am Jackie, and it's time to update you guys on my reading. So I decided to. I'm still reading the Recognitions on and off. Like I finally finished chapter 1. It's one of those books where the chapters are really incredibly long. And I have mixed feelings about that because sometimes like I don't like long chapters, really long chapters, and other times, especially if there's not very many page breaks, other times, as long as I'm interested in it, I don't mind it as much. In fact, actually, this one is kind of like that, or at least it's divided not by chapters, but by sections. Like, there's no chapter numbers in it. But, I ended up deciding to reorganize my shelf again, because I was what kind of triggered it was, I don't even remember what the video was, but there was a video, maybe I was thinking about, like, I don't even remember, but, there was a video I know that I watched that I decided, I'm gonna do that too. Or it wasn't that they were doing what I did with my books, my bookshelf, organization-wise, but it made me think of it. How I decided to organize my books by page length, which means some of the books in series are kind of separated because, they don't always get, like, longer as the series progresses. Sometimes they are a little bit shorter. At least with, like, adult series and stuff. Like, fantasy and, like, YA, it seems like the books just get longer and longer as the series progresses. And it also depends. There's a lot of factors also. There's the material that they use for pages. Like sometimes they use the Bible thin pages. And, or sometimes they use thicker pages. And so it looks, bigger or smaller than it really is. So some of them, the series are separated. Which I'm not one of those people who, I'm not bothered by it. I can understand why people are bothered by it, why people have to have series together. But it doesn't bother me as much. I mean, the fact that I also stack some of my books, especially the mass market ones, horizontally means that, I'm not as, like, picky about it being, like, perfectly confined or whatever, are perfect, like, lines and as my books are sitting on my shelf. As long as they don't fall down. That's the only thing that bothers me, is when I stack them horizontally, sometimes they will fall down. On one of my shelves, it doesn't have a back, so the books can easily fall down. And the book encasing material, it can be a little slippery when it's stacked together. If there's not books on each side holding them together. If it's, like, not in the middle, or it doesn't have, like, walls, then they can easily slide off when you try to remove one. So that's a bit of a hassle. But stacking them that way horizontally makes room and space, because if you stack it, like, vertically, then it takes up more room, and and of course mass market books are smaller, so it takes up, unnecessary space if I do it that way. But I want to, like, because I also realize that, longer books, 500 plus page books, takes me longer to read, because I'm not, like, one of those people I'm not a fast reader, and I like watching TV and movies. And I get lost on the, in the, rabbit hole that is the internet, or YouTube videos particularly. So, like, it used to be, like, Facebook, and for a little while, like, a very small amount of time, there was a little bit of me scrolling through Instagram, but mostly it was, like, Facebook and then YouTube videos. But now I'm kind of learning to try to control it, and also I've been wanting to get away from Facebook for a while, because, particularly with what's going on in the world right now. And now I am still at risk when it comes to YouTube, especially because if it's a show that I love and I love the cast, then I will go look for interviews with the cast members and the actors that are, play the characters. And that's kind of what I was doing. That was what I was doing last night with, I was working, rewatching Gotham, all 5 seasons. And I've been watching interviews with the cast members and my particular favorite actors in it. So it's, it can be a little, so I have to find the right balance between reading and then watching. Like, it's late at night is when I get caught up in, watching YouTube, because then that's usually when I watch a lot of my TV shows, is late at night. Unless it's like Christmas, those Christmas movies on, on Hallmark Channel. I can watch those during the day because they don't have too many scenes in the dark. And then sometimes, I'll channel surf and see if like there's movies or shows on some of the other channels I watch sometimes. But a lot of times I watch a lot of fantasy and sci-fi, and more so fantasy than sci-fi. And so they have a lot of scenes that are in dark. So sometimes it's better to watch it in the evening as it gets darker. So I use the daytime to get my reading done, and then, of course I read before I fall asleep, but then I don't usually get a lot of reading done. I may get a few pages read. It also depends on the type of story it is, like if it's a slower story like a lot of classics are, or if it's like, I'm reading a book with small print, like mass markets and stuff, then I won't get as many. But if I'm reading like a big print book, like say something such as, like this one, I could get like this. I could get a good amount. I could potentially get more than a few pages read. By the way, this is Dr. Sleep. But anyway, so since I put away my books, I was able to start over with selecting my books. And I was just feeling very stressed out. I always put this pressure on myself because, when readathons, I get excited about, and I get about readathons and get excited about the ones I'm going to pick. And then even if it's a longer readathon, it takes 2 weeks to a month, then I will still manage to get stressed because the books I feel like I want to read, or that I want to use this as an excuse to get them read and finished, are books that I know I won't get them finished. So I end up stressing myself out, and I end up picking up more books than I probably can get read within the month, even though this is a longer month in February. So it was that me redoing myself is also a way not only to show my books, the length of my books, and which one, the shorter books compared to the really long ones, and keep them organized. I know I can be more selective. But also, it was kind of like I was starting over with my reading, and like starting over for the month, even though I can't. It's too late now. I have like maybe 10 days left. Let's see, it's the 21st. So yeah, I think 10 days, because the month ends I think there's 31 days in the month. I'll have to double check on that. Or when you guys can tell me if I'm wrong and it's actually 30 days. But I think there's 31 days in March. And so so I still could potentially, I decided to read this. This is one of the first books I picked off the shelf the other night that I decided to start reading, because this is actually a reread, because I read this I think either junior or sophomore year, or it might have been middle school when I read it. I don't remember. But I read this, and at the time, I gotta admit I wasn't as into it back then. But I had been wanting to reread it because I've been getting more into Steinbeck, and I had one of those Barnes and Noble tomes with most of the authors' work in it, a lot of the authors' other work. Like, and at this one, it had like a lot of his shorter works in it, and so And then I said this before, that I've learned the problem with those books, those Barnes and Noble leather-bound books, is that it's kind of hard to read them, and I can't take them traveling with me. So of course you guys know I've been collecting a bunch of Dickens books in the mass market paperbacks, and then the same in not mass market but in paperbacks, and then the same with I started collecting Jane Austen as well. And I almost bought Sense and Sensibility yesterday, or the last time I went to Barnes Books A Million. Although I don't know if I found it or not. Actually, I don't think I found it. I don't think I saw it. I looked over there and I didn't see it. But I'm trying to be careful how many books I buy. I'm trying to limit myself to how many books I buy a month. But my argument here is that mass markets, if I buy a mass market, I could get away with buying two mass markets because they're small books and they're a little cheaper. And then, but if it's something like this, then it's going to be like this. Is $16 because it's the Centennial edition. It's a special edition, which I do like these covers, even though it looks like it shouldn't be that expensive. It's a kind of a special edition. But in case you don't know what Of Mice and Men is about, it's basically about these two guys, Lenny and George. And George is very smart. He's not a genius, but he's like street smart, and he's, and he's a bit of a small guy, and he wants to make money so that he can have his own place. And he has his friend who's this big guy who's not, like, his IQ is a little bit lower. He's not as smart as George, and he's a little bit more ignorant, and he's just kind of, he has the mentality of a child, and so George just kind of has to take care of him. And the problem is that, and you might be able to make a case that he has mental health problems. But I don't know what they would be, but I feel like that might be the case. But of course, when this book was published, they wouldn't know. I mean, I'd be curious to look up, look at Spark Notes or look at people's reviews and see if they would think the same way, that maybe Lenny has mental health issues. And they are trying to get a job at a farm so they can make enough money to have their own place. But the problem is that Lenny doesn't always know any better and tends to get in trouble without realizing it. And that's what happened, off page. Something happened at the previous farm where they worked, where he got in trouble, and George had to kind of bail him out of it, and so they have to go to a new place. And George is constantly having to protect Lenny, and he does, and he really cares about him, but he also gets very frustrated with Lenny because, he doesn't want to be responsible, but, for this man, but he kind of resents him, but at the same time, I think there's a devotion and love for Lenny that George feels, and a loyalty to him. And I do remember what happened at the end. So I already know what happens at the end. And, and it's now, I am one of those people that does not get emotionally, I'll get angry at a book or at characters, but I don't ever cry. But I think that's partly because I need the visual. I'm more affected by the actual visual of, and an actor performing it. Excuse me. An actor performing it, and hearing an actor's voice and seeing an actor rather than, reading it off the page. I can't get emotional. The most I'll get is maybe angry, but that's about it. So as you can see, it's not that long. And like I said earlier, it's not by chapters, it's kind of by sections. Like, they look like, chapters are, but they're no, like, chapter 1, chapter 2, chapter 3 kind of thing. But I'm almost, as you can see, because it's short, I don't have that much to read. I could probably get it done within a day or two. it depends. But I'm enjoying. I'm glad I reread it. I definitely appreciate it more now, and I'm getting into it more. And I barely remember things. I mean, I remember the ending, like I said, and I remember George's name. I couldn't. I don't think I remember Lenny's name though, but I kind of remember. And actually, Lenny kind of made me think of the character. There was a Supernatural episode where there were like the boys help get rid of like have to get rid of a ghost of a man who's also kind of big and scary looking, but he's actually kind of a softie like Lenny, and he falls in love with this one girl who's really nice to him, but I don't know if she's married. I think she's married to the guy. Was married to the guy, and her husband and his friends up killing the man by dragging him along on one of the by a tractor and a chain, and it results in killing him. So he becomes a ghost and starts haunting him, and the boys gonna do what they gotta do. And the ghost kind of made me think of Lenny a little bit in the like physique and personality and how he thinks. But yeah, this is good though. I like it. I mean, it's not my all-time favorite classic, but I'm reading it and I'm enjoying it. And so will still be the only Steinbeck that I have finished, because I started a while back. I started East of Eden. I did start that, but I still have not finished it because I have trouble finishing longer 500 plus page books. And then I still started Grapes of Wrath, but I've seen a play version of Grapes of Wrath, and at the time I saw one, I was still kind of tired and not a lot, and the plot is not the most exciting plot from what I remember, so I fell asleep at the time, and I feel really bad because my dad was, it was kind of a treat for me, going to take me to see a play in DC at one of the famous theaters, the Ford Theater actually, where Lincoln was shot at, and but I felt bad because I kind of fell asleep at the time, but I'm definitely gonna read it. I definitely want to read it, and I love these covers, by the way, these Centennial Edition covers. And there is one for East of Eden. It's white, but I have the Penguin edition of East of Eden, so I feel guilty having 2 copies of East of Eden. I wouldn't maybe I would buy it. I don't know. But I'm one of those people just who feels guilty if I have more than one copy of a book, and both copies are in good, decent condition. And it's like, I feel guilty because one of them will just end up sitting there the whole time. I mean, I guess I could go back and forth in reading them, but anyway, so that's what I'm doing. Yeah, and then today I also started reading. I got back to Tipping the Velvet by Sarah Waters, which is another queer romance. You have our main character, what is her name? I forgot her name. Nancy Asterly, and she's an oyster girl, and she is taken to a performance of a showgirl named Kitty Butler, who dresses up like a man and sings and dances and puts on a show and everything. And Nancy is immediately smitten with her, is immediately taken with her, and falls head over heels. And Kitty takes on Nancy as her, is intrigued by Nancy and is taken by her and takes her on as kind of as like her makeup and dresser and stuff for backstage. But of course, this is the 1800s, so being queer it's even worse back then. Being queer was not as accepted. And, it's even worse back, and of course it's even worse back then. it was even harder back then. At least today, society somewhat knows people, the people that are of that sexual orientation, that they accept them. I mean, granted, unfortunately, there's still hate for people that have that sexual orientation. But it would, like I said, it was, so they kind of have to, like, she's Nancy has to kind of keep it secret and be very discreet about it. And she doesn't even know if Kitty feels the same way about her. And she ends up Kitty asks her to come with her to London because she gets a new, where she can become a big star and become super famous. And so she accompanies her to London, and that's where I'm at in the book right now. And I feel like it's, of course, one of these situations where her parents are actually, they're like, her siblings and cousins kind of give her a hard time about it and tease her, or they're a little jealous about it. And while her parents are trying to be very understanding, they don't want, they're gonna miss her and didn't want her to go, but they're not those kinds of parents who are like, no, you're forbidden to go, and what's wrong with you? Like, they try not to, or they're like quietly judgmental, but not in a hateful way. Which I guess I definitely understand. Nancy's like, I would be kind of annoyed because on the one hand I would want to go, but then my parents would be still understanding, and it's like, damn it, I want to have a good reason to not miss you guys if I were in her position. Luckily I haven't been in her position before, thankfully. But I love Sarah Waters' writing. It's so beautiful and just and this is definitely very, like, there's a lot of moments of sensual moments. And that's why I prefer the more subtle approach. That's why when I do read this kind of stuff, I want a more subtle, like little touches, little moments where it's like you're salivating because you want these two to get together and do the deed and everything and be together romantically, but then at the same time, there's like things holding them back. And, it makes it so much more, you want to keep going because you're rooting for this couple. Like, if they jumped at it right away, then it would get boring and old. Which I guess is why a lot of TV screenwriters will keep dangling a couple in front of you, but they will never get them together until, like, if they get them together before the end, then they're gonna fall apart later on. Or, like, one of them's gonna leave or something. And then, but if they get together at the end, then they'll get to ride off to the sunset. I mean, it is realistic. Couples don't stay together forever. I mean, I think it's very rare for a couple to stay together forever, I mean, like, I know couples, like my parents, met in high school, and they're still happily married for, I do not know how many years now. I'm going to say, like, 35 or something. They've been happily together. I mean, it's not like perfect. There are moments, but they give me, good confidence in love and that it's gonna work out and stuff like that, and that kind of love can happen. But of course, with a show or a movie or a book, it's so boring. It is not as exciting. It's more thrilling when the couple is angled in front of you and it's the will they, won't they, or they're trying to ignore their feelings, but the feelings are there. Like, it's definitely more interesting. Or like when someone has feelings, or it's even more interesting when someone has feelings for someone, but then the other person doesn't feel the same way. They can call it hot. But like, seriously, you cannot say I love you in Gotham or reject someone in Gotham. It gets dangerous. It's scary. You can't do that. But so I'm on chapter 4, and they're in London, surrounded by all these performers and stuff like that. And of course, Nan is feeling a little out of place, and not very, but at the same time, she doesn't really care because, of course, she also is with Kitty. But then Kitty said, let's be like sisters. So it's like, oh crap. You know, I have these feelings for you and I'm attracted to you, but you want to be more like a sister to me. Although I'm pretty sure that Kitty also has feelings for her, but because of the time period, I think she's trying to resist those feelings and ignore them. Although there was something that, in chapter 3 that, where is it? Let me find it. Okay, let me read this. I did it. It was a wonderful feeling, but a fearful one too, for you felt all the time that you didn't deserve your own good fortune, that you had received it quite by error in someone else's place, and then it might be taken from you while your gaze was turned elsewhere. And there was nothing you would not do, I thought, nothing you would not sacrifice to keep your heart's desire once you had been given it. I knew that Kitty and I felt just the same, only, of course, about different things. I should have remembered this later. So that felt a little bit foreboding. I'm guessing that things are gonna go south between the two of them once they put their feelings out there. Not just because of that they are two women in love, but because Kitty is a performer. She's like, she's an artist or an artiste. So, and they always have that trope of the artiste that will do anything to get what they want. The artiste that is so very ambitious, they will sacrifice the people that they claim to love to get what they want. Now, I don't know how accurate that is, but, and as far as I'm concerned, at least the actors that I have come to, be a fan of, that I've seen them in interviews, and they don't seem like that type, but you never know with people. You don't know with people in Hollywood. I feel like actors, you don't know them 100%. You know who they are to you as a fan, but there's always going to be a side of them that you'll never know. And you just hope that in their interviews they're being as genuine as possible, but there's probably a little slither on that. That's not completely genuine. But, so yeah, I'm reading that. Those are really the only two books I've read today. And like I said, I have read a little bit. I finally finished chapter 1 of this. This is very engaging, very interesting. It's just a long, dense book, and the chapters are really long. But I keep thinking, because of course I watched, Leaf by Leaf, his video discussion on the recognitions, his review. So I'm just thinking about all the stuff he's already talked about, and like trying and being like, oh, this is probably what this means, or this is probably is reference to this, and is why the character goes in this direction. Like in his review, he covered a lot of chapter 1. Of course, it's a long book, so it feels like he only really talked about chapter 1, or as in details wise. Like he didn't spoil, I know that the book is essentially about a man who becomes an art forger, which you can get that in the description, and he thinks his forgeries of art hold more value and are more special than his own work, his own original work. And I feel like what the impression I get is that his Aunt May was constantly berating him, because she ends up dying by the end, like halfway through the chapter, and she's telling him, when he shows her his original work, she's like, "How dare you? Only God is an artist. Only God can create art. What are you trying to do? You're trying to say you're better than God and all that," and which is the problem with people that get that way. I feel like that's part of why people have trouble believing in God and taking God seriously, and look at the invisible man in the sky. Because people like that. I mean, they definitely are very interesting characters, though. People like that. they're characters that you get frustrated with, but you find so fascinating. And like I said, I am a Christian. I do believe in God and stuff like that. I mean, I try not to, but I know every so often I mention it. Like right now. But these people, those kinds of people fascinate me because I'm not that person who tries to push my beliefs. In fact, I feel weird and uncomfortable with those people who come up to me and give me a pamphlet that has, God's word on it or one of the verses in the Bible or something, because it's just it makes me a little uncomfortable because it's like, to me, your beliefs and your religion should be private. The only time I think you would share it is that when you go to church and you're around your fellow churchgoers, then yeah, of course. But, I mean, and I get that, you want to get people, there are people that want to convert, and I understand that, but sometimes you shouldn't press too hard. I don't feel comfortable with people pushing it on you, because, I mean, and, even if you have good intentions, because then you're just going to push people that don't believe away because they're going to find it, they're going to roll their eyes, they're not going to take you seriously. And it's not, again, it just makes me uncomfortable. Because it makes organized religion, it makes it look people already don't like it enough as it is. It just makes it even more silly and stuff like that. And then, of course, you have those religions that are take it a little too far. Although, I think almost every religion has that group of people that take it too far. And again, I bring this up, of course, because the character of Aunt May is very much a religious person, and puts her religion, and has this, when Wyatt, the son, our protagonist, shows her his own original work, which I'm sure is really beautiful, and, is really beautiful and stuff, she's like, gets mad, and is like, God is the only artist, you can't do this. And it's like, okay, what about all those famous artists? Like, now I don't know what year that took place in, but, like, so I don't know which artist, but I guess, like, there's Van Gogh, there's Da Vinci, there's Michelangelo, there's all these artists that create these beautiful works of art, and they're not trying to say they're superior to God. They just want to make something beautiful that means something to them. That's what art is about, in my opinion. It's all about making something that means something to you and bringing it to life. And it's not about showing up God or something, In fact, a lot of those artists probably believe in God as well, and it's not going to hurt anybody, but that's the kind of person Aunt May is. She's the kind of person who feels like, how dare someone create art? Because they shouldn't, they're usurping God. It's like, it's like, chill out. It's not, and I think that forms why he becomes an art forger, is because he's just basically copying off of someone else's work. So it's like, maybe he's thinking, well, I can feel less guilty if I just copy off of someone's work, instead of trying to create my own, because at least I'm not trying to create art myself. I'm not trying to usurp anyone. I'm not trying to say I'm better than anyone, whether it's God or anyone else. And I'm just copying off of someone's work. But of course, as the description of the book says, someone takes advantage of that, eventually takes advantage of that, and exposes his art. And I imagine it's going to be a situation where he's going to feel stuck, and he's going to try to get out of it, but this person is going to use, like, blackmail or something to be like, no, you have to stay with me because of this and this and this. But yeah, it's definitely interesting. I'm really liking it. I'm really enjoying it. It's just a long book, and it's a lot, and I have to pick certain times to read it. And then, of course, you have I haven't read this today, but the last thing I read from this is that the I can't remember her name, Rose, I think it is, or Rosie or something. She and the gang have gone out. She and the True Knot gang have gone after another kid. This baseball kid, and because they need to feed off of him. Which, again, I'm wondering if this is any connection to, and they do. I think Stephen King does make a reference to Nosferatu, but I wonder if the two of the father and son connected them, worked to, talked about connecting those two, because I think there's a reference to that book, and the impression I get is that I can't remember that character's name. I haven't picked up the book in a while, but the character in the antagonist in Nosferatu is kind of like the True Knot group. Now there is, I know, a graphic novel that kind of explains his origins. The character in that book's origins, and the Wraith and all that. Now I don't know if the TV show covers that. I can watch the show. No, if I can't, I might just go ahead and watch the show. Even on, because it's gonna be a while before I can get the book finished. That particular book finished. But yeah, the True Knot people will make me think of that guy a little bit, because they're like vampires, but they're not the traditional vampire that has the fangs and drinks blood and all that. Like, they feed off of energy and someone's essence. And Abra has this connection where, her shining, she can connect to other people and have visions and jump into people's bodies and into their heads, not bodies, into their heads and stuff. So she witnesses this kid's death, this kid's murder, and she's been in contact with Tony and Dan, and she sees Dan as Tony's father, because she doesn't realize, you find out that Tony is actually like a part of Dan's mind. Like something he created psychologically to help him deal with the Shining, I think. And Abra contacts them. And she's like 12, I think, when they meet. And they meet secretly, and she passes him off as her uncle, so it will look all weird and creepy because he's an older man. He's a grown man, probably in his 40s, and she's a 12-year-old girl, so that could be taken, could be a little concerning, and they look like, oh, he's this old creepy man that's going after a young girl. It's not even 16, she's 12. So she has to pass him off as her uncle, and they talk about it, and he helps her, and he's helping her with the Shining, explains her what it is, and she warns him about the True Knot people, which is the last thing I read. And he also, although he just tried to track down, he was hoping to get into contact with Dick Halloran, who you meet in the first book. He's the chef at the Overlook Hotel who helped Danny. But of course, sadly, Dan finds out that Dick Halloran had died. Which is it's so sad. I was hoping the character would reappear because I liked him. But, the guy was already, old. So in the first books, of course, as Dan, the conclusion that Dan comes to is he's probably dead. Or at least in his 90s, if anything. Now, I don't know if he's going to have, like, a psychic vision of Dick Halloran. Maybe he's going to, something like that. But yeah, once I finish the book, then I'm going to keep an eye out for the movie at some point. But it'll be very interesting, because I've never seen, I've never seen, Ewan McGregor in this kind of role before. And, now, of course, if you've seen Fargo, his season when he was on Fargo, I think, not Fargo. Was it Fargo? I can't remember, like, it might have been Fargo. It was definitely the guy who created Fargo. His own show where he plays two twin brothers. And they're completely, and I imagine those brothers are similar to the character of Dan. um, in that one. So it'll be very interesting to see him. So, but I haven't watched that show. Like, I've seen clips of it because there was one of those actors on actors. I don't know if you can get that on TV or not, but I know it's on. I can watch it on YouTube, and it was him and Nicole Kidman. And of course, they talk about Moulin Rouge, but she asked him about that show that I want to say it might be Fargo. I don't know. I don't really know how that show works. I've never watched it. It's the same guy who did Legion, the show about Charles Xavier's long lost son, I think. Something I think. There's so much lore and history with like the Marvel and DC comics. It's like hard to keep up with everything. It's like, okay, who's related to who is whose kid, what's their history, how do they get their powers, and blah blah blah. I mean, what's their background. There's just so much information that the comics, and that I don't know, and I'm not gonna buy a bunch of comics. In all honesty, probably that won't happen. But I've never, either way though, it's the guy who, did Legion. He did the show that Ewan McGregor is in. I want to say it's Fargo, but I don't know. And I imagine those characters could potentially be like Dan Torrance a little bit. So I'm sure if I watched that show, then I could picture it more easily. But at the moment, I'm having trouble picturing him as that character. Because even when he was kind of an antagonist in Angels and Demons, he was still kind of a soft character and a nice guy, and was doing it for the good, and he wasn't like dirty or anything. He didn't have, like, it was it was different than this. He wasn't as scruffy, and the character wasn't as scruffy and I had a hard life kind of thing. So yeah, when I'm done with that book, I'm gonna watch the movie at some point. Hopefully. It'll be kind of hard because I might have to wait until it's on TV or something, and but yeah, so that's really what's going on with my reading. As far as TV, like I said, I'm rewatching Gotham, all 5 seasons, and I did it after watching. I can't remember the channel name, but after watching that, I can't remember the channel's name, but he also is one of the channels who watch movies and do a commentary on them. Like I think he did one on Holes, and he did Jennifer's Body. Like he does a lot of 90s and 2000s movies. And he recently has a series of videos now where he will watch the first episode and the last episode of a show that he's never seen before and, form an opinion on it. So he did one on Vampire Diaries where he watched and it made me kind of decide to watch it again. Like, I had watched I don't even know when I stopped watching it. But I watched the first few seasons and I liked it, but then I just kind of got bored with it. But I decided to watch it again, and all the way from the beginning. It is kind of weird watching it again, because I did watch the first few seasons, so it's a little weird because I know what's gonna happen and stuff like that. I have a basic idea of what's gonna happen, at least in the first 3 or 4 seasons. It is weird, looking back, and the same thing with Gotham. Looking back at the characters and the situations where they end up by the end of the series, it's so interesting. Who ends up with who, especially, and just the kind of the development these characters go through, and what they become. And of course, I've heard bits and pieces of how batshit crazy Vampire Diaries gets with the characters and their storyline. And it's very interesting looking back. And I'm able to, and I feel like I'm able to watch it without being too I want you to go away, and I choose this character over you, and I can't wait to get to that character, or for those 2 characters to be in a relationship. But I feel like I'm watching it without, because being in a shipping couples can be really stressful. Because it's like people get so defensive of their ships. Not to say I'm guiltless of that. I mean, I can get that way too. But after a while, I just got tired of it. I just got exhausted fighting people, and I've gone to where I just accept. Even if I don't agree with that ship, I mean, I will still rant to myself or talk to whoever's willing to listen, like it's Terry or Larissa or someone, and just be like, this frustrates me, this ship frustrates me, this ship doesn't make any sense to me, or why would they ship these two characters together? But I'm not, I have ships that people will probably question my sanity and why I ship them. And I don't feel like I have to explain, because first of all, it's fiction, it's not real, and just because I like that ship does not mean I'm in support of that kind of relationship in the real world. I mean, but let's face it, certain kinds of relationships are more entertaining in fiction. But it doesn't mean that those people, I mean, and I do have to remind myself, because sometimes there are times when there are people in my life that I'm like, they like certain things or certain books or shows or whatever, that I have to remind myself, well, I don't like when people question my favorite ships. So I shouldn't question them. I shouldn't judge them. It doesn't mean that they feel this way, that they think this is okay to like this, or to in the real world. It's just sometimes it's more entertaining to like. I mean, like with Gotham, there are certain ships on Gotham that they probably in real life they probably would not be healthy relationships. But they're entertaining in the world of fiction. They keep you engaged, and everybody has a dark side. Everybody has a part of them that it's just that in TV shows allow us to live vicariously through them, even though in real life, as long as you don't take it out to the real world and think it's okay, which I don't, because I've been brought up right and my mind is very stable, and I don't think certain things. I mean, I don't. So it's just kind of fun to watch them, even though. But it is awkward when you have to defend it and come up with a good argument of why you support it. There's a couple of ships. Let's just say I'm gonna say I'm Team Damon, and I'm also Team Spike. But there are very questionable moral things that those characters do. That why should you support those ships? And there's this one infamous scene that Spike crosses the line with Buffy, that people's like, what is wrong with you? Why do you support this kind of mentality? And it's like, I'm not going to defend myself because I like a certain fictional couple. And it gets very stressful, because it's like you feel like you have to defend yourself. You have to make a good argument of why you like it. Maybe that's just me, but I figure as long as in the real world it's not acceptable. That kind of liking that kind of person, because it's unhealthy, and it's and like in the case of Buffy and Spike, they used each other and Spike crossed the line. I'm aware of that. I'm not stupid. Just because I like a fictional couple, again, I remind you, fictional, it's not real. It's just fun and entertaining. And these writers can make these characters seem human and make you still feel a little bit of sympathy. Now, I feel like screenwriters, they appreciate, and authors appreciate when you have strong feelings, whether it's hate feelings or love feelings. I don't think they care, because it just shows they're doing their job. And the same thing with the actors. It's showing that they're doing their job because they want you to have strong feelings about these characters, whether it's negative feelings or positive feelings. But yeah, it's just very stressful to have a ship, and I don't want to do that anymore. So I will keep my shipping to myself, and and like I will watch, and to get my comfortable feelings at having someone to connect with, I will talk to someone, or I will watch those videos on YouTube. To assure me I'm not alone, I'm not that weird about it, like if I like these kinds of ships. But anyway, yeah, so that's what's kind of going on outside of reading. So I would, as always, I would love to know what you guys are reading, or if you're watching, if you're doing more than just reading, like if you're watching TV or watching a certain show, rewatching a show you used to love, or watching a new show. I'd love to hear in the comments below. Is it like, if you guys like this video, be sure to give it a thumbs up. Click subscribe if you haven't already. Click the bell notification below if you want to be notified when I post new videos. Continue wearing your mask. Stay 6 feet apart. Keep your hands sanitized and wash it. And I will talk to y'all later. Alright, bye.